Hey guys, Scarlet here. I hope you all are doing well today. And if you are new to the community, welcome. I want to say thanks for coming to join me and watching this video. And if you do like topics such as tarot, paganism, and magic, do please consider hitting that subscribe button down below. And for all my returning viewers, welcome as well. Today we have a fun video for you. I'm going to be going over 10 different misconceptions people have about pagans. And this is kind of a fun topic because when I am out and about in the real world, and if someone does ask me what my belief is or what my religion is, I tend to straight out tell the truth. I say, I'm pagan. And the next statement that comes out of their mouth is usually a concern based on a particular misconception, or it's just the fact that they don't know what pagan means and they're just kind of confused. So I've heard a lot of interesting responses over the years when I do tell people I'm pagan, and a lot of misconceptions too about what it means to be pagan and what pagans believe in. So I thought I would run through 10 different misconceptions that I have heard a few times about pagans. So the first misconception is all pagans are Wiccans. So a lot of people might be familiar with the concept of Wicca. Wicca is a religion created by Gerald Gardner in the 1950s, and you might consider Wicca as neo-pagan. It is a branch under the umbrella concept of paganism, which means if you are Wiccan, you can also be pagan, but just because you are pagan does not necessarily indicate that you are Wiccan. So pagans often do share a lot of similar ideas and belief structures with Wiccans, and that's in part because Wicca, when it was created in the 50s, it took a lot of inspiration from pre-Christian societies and ritual traditions. So yes, a lot of Wiccan concepts and symbols and traditions are based on pagan societies, but they didn't try to necessarily reconstruct them exactly from their original aspect. So there is a bit of an overlap often with pagans and Wiccans, but just because someone is pagan does not mean that they are also automatically a Wiccan. So that is the first misconception that I do hear often. So our second misconception is that pagans are part of the New Age movement, or that paganism came about in the New Age movement. So this is another interesting one, and all of these do have a fair amount of complexity to them. So they're not straight yes or no answers, really. But paganism, to me and in my view, and of course pagans will vary in their perspective of the religion, but for me, paganism is all about trying to reconnect and uncover and use pre-Christian religious traditions in our modern lives. So because we are working with spirituality and religious traditions that are older than Christianity, well then of course it's not necessarily something that started out in the New Age movement, because it has existed for millennia. However, the reason people tend to think that is because paganism gained a lot of popularity in the New Age movement. And that's also when Wicca became very popular as well. And the whole New Age movement was in part based on a desire to return to earth-based spirituality. And paganism is earth-based spirituality. So that's why those two things are conflated. However, I would say that paganism isn't just something springing from the New Age movement. It's really trying to understand these ancient customs, these ancient traditions and symbols from pre-Christian societies and to work them into our own. Oops, my cat just like completely knocked something over. Did you see that? Sorry, where was I? Oh yes. So yeah, it is a misconception because paganism really goes back millennia, even though they wouldn't have called themselves pagan necessarily. It was just the religion of certain societies. So that is the second misconception. The third misconception definitely annoys me, and that is people who think paganism is a cult. And that's pretty ridiculous because no one's ever, you know, knocked on my door and tried to convince me to, you know, give up my friends and join some weird religious tradition or move to some house in the middle of nowhere and and learn from some gurus. Like, that's never happened. In general, pagans do not even proselytize or purposely try to recruit new members. Paganism is very much a belief structure that you come to on your own, usually. While there are communities such as like covens, and certain coven members may or may not be pagan, I would definitely not consider those cult-like in any way. And at the same time, you know, not all pagans, most pagans aren't members of a coven. So really paganism is the exact opposite, because there is not really a centralized structure and there's not really an incentive to go out there and gain new followers and stuff like that. It's everyone just on their own path trying to reconnect with the earth. So that's the third misconception. So the fourth one is a bit inappropriate. So there are a lot of people who have the misconception that because pagans tend to be sex positive, that pagan rituals include like orgies and kind of crazy sexual situations. So on the one hand, most pagans do not find sexuality sinful. In fact, it is a something that's meant to be celebrated and venerated. It's a beautiful union of the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. And you see that in a lot of beliefs around the concept of a god and a goddess. And there's even the concept of the great rite, those, you know, two deities coming together in sexual union. And of course, not all pagans believe in a particular one god or one goddess, but sexuality has always been a part of pagan religions. You can think back to ancient Egypt or ancient Rome. You know, of course, sexuality is a core component of the beliefs, but it's not necessarily means that you as a practitioner or as someone who celebrates this particular spiritual path needs to participate in any type of odd sexual thing. Unfortunately, over time, there have been groups and that have, you know, contributed to sexual pressure to join the group, and that's very negative. And, you know, most pagans completely disavow anyone that pressures anyone to participate in a sexual act in order to gain entry into a specific religious group. So while there have been some instances in the past, I do think it is in general a misconception that just because you're pagan, you're into a lot of crazy stuff. That's definitely not the case. So our next misconception is about food. And a lot of people seem to think if you are pagan, then that means you're probably also a vegan or a vegetarian. And that probably has to do with the concept that a lot of pagans, you know, we're kind of returning to an earth-based spirituality, and we venerate and honor Mother Earth and do our best to take care of Mother Earth. But that definitely doesn't mean we're all vegans or vegetarians. And I actually was a vegetarian for about 10 years. I'm no longer a vegetarian and I'm not a vegan. And when you look back historically, the pagan societies, they all ate meat. You know, and also even the eating of meat and these feasts, these bacchanals, were a significant part of the spiritual tradition. So you know, eating meat does not necessarily mean that you are being a bad pagan. In fact, you're probably being more true to the ancient civilizations that did celebrate these pagan festivals. So the next misconception is a fun one. So this is that if you are pagan, that means that you must be some type of crazy feminist. So I would consider myself a feminist in the sense that I believe in equal rights for men and women and equal pay and things like that. But really that doesn't have anything to do with my spirituality. Those are more like a mindset that's, to me, not as related to paganism specifically. And in fact, when you look at pagan religions, they do still tend to be a bit patriarchal, though I would say women did have a much bigger role spiritually in earlier pagan traditions than within Judeo-Christian traditions. For example, of course, you have priestesses, and you do not have female priests in Christianity, but you have priestesses as a big, significant role and an important role in a lot of pre-Christian pagan societies. So women traditionally in paganism were venerated for their spiritual prowess and their intuitive abilities. So women have always had a strong role, an important role in paganism. And even within, if you are a neo-pagan, you might even, you know, really believe in and hone in on the concept of a god and a goddess both being equal but different. And that union between them is something beautiful. So just because you are a pagan does not mean you're a crazy feminist, though, you know, if you are a feminist, you know, that's great too. It really is kind of its own thing. You know, paganism doesn't have too much to do with feminism. I would have a quick note though, when you think about witches, and not all pagans practice witchcraft. Some witches may also consider themselves pagan, so it's that similar kind of umbrella term, you know, paganism that you have with like Wicca. Like some Wiccans are pagan, some witches are pagan, but not all are. So when you think about witches currently, there have been a lot that have embraced feminism and have campaigned within feminist activism. So that is definitely something that's going on, but that doesn't mean that there is a super strong connection between feminism specifically in historic pagan religions. There's a lot of complexity there, but you know, I do worry that people think that you're, you know, either a new age hippie or a crazy feminist if you're a pagan. And while you can definitely be those things and happily be a pagan, it doesn't mean you have to. So the next misconception is that you practice witchcraft if you are a pagan. So this is one of those things that many pagans might practice witchcraft, but not all do, and it's not necessary because paganism is really more of a religion. It's a belief system. It's what you believe. Oops, my cat's kind of knocking things over again. So paganism's really more about what you believe, not what you do. And witchcraft is an act. It is, you can think of witchcraft as kind of prayer with tools, right? Because with witchcraft, you are setting your intention and you are using certain objects and words and rituals in order to further emphasize that particular intention that you have set up for yourself. So we have 3 more misconceptions to run through. The next one is that you are going to hell if you are a pagan. So a lot of angry Christians that I have met have told me this. I get told this at least once a month from someone online. At this point, it really doesn't bother me. I got a pretty thick skin when it comes to online harassment. But yeah, so a lot of people think, you know, if you are pagan, you're automatically going to hell. Well, within their belief modality, they probably would think that, perhaps, but for pagans, most pagans don't really believe in hell, that hell is a Christian concept coming from that religion. and isn't as relevant in our belief system. So I don't believe in hell, and I don't think I'm gonna go there. So our next misconception, kind of along that same line, is that you believe in the devil or that you worship the devil. And it's a similar kind of thing. Well, the devil is mostly a Christian concept, and while you might have some Satanists that might also consider themselves pagan, so there is a little addendum to that, but for the most part, most pagans do not worship the devil. We view the devil as a Christian idea, a Christian concept, so it's not really relevant to our personal belief system. And the last one along that kind of darker path that we are going down is that because you're pagan, that means you sacrifice animals. And for most pagans, this is definitely a no. Of course, I do not sacrifice animals, though some people in Santeria do, you know, kill chickens. That is a thing. And traditionally, animal sacrifices were used within paganism. If you think back to ancient Rome or ancient Greece or ancient Egypt, animal sacrifice was definitely a thing. Now, do most pagans do that nowadays? Definitely not, and I never have, and I don't think I will. So while that has been something historically that people have done as part of their pagan religion, it's something that the vast majority of people do not do now. So those were the 10 misconceptions that I hear often when I tell people I'm pagan. So I would love to hear your thoughts on these. Did I miss any misconceptions? Have you heard a misconception that you'd like me to talk about in a future video? And what are your thoughts on these ideas? I would love to hear. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next week. Bye.